You're listening to the Amazing Facts Daily Devotional. Today's topic, Annie Smith, a dream, a meeting, a decision, Part 2. Annie Smith worked feverishly for James White at the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald office. When the Whites traveled to encourage believers, she became, in effect, the editor of the weekly paper. Poverty and straitened circumstances were not uncommon in the early days of the Adventist Church. The Whites moved from Saratoga Springs to Rochester, New York, and as many as 18 people lived with the Whites at one time. Annie's writing flourished, however, despite the adverse circumstances. She wrote a total of 45 hymns and poems which appeared in the review as well as the Youth's Instructor, aimed at the young people of the growing movement. The young woman's personal life was far less settled than her professional career, however. Annie came to know, respect, and apparently deeply admire John Nevins Andrews, a rising preacher in Adventism. Whether or not her affections were in any way returned, her hopes were dashed when Andrews instead showed interest in another girl. Crushed, Annie soldiered on, working on her editing and poetry, living with the Whites and others. Tuberculosis invaded the circle of workers there in 1852, but it would be 2 more years before Annie would come down with the illness. It would take about 9 months before the young pioneering church member would succumb to the illness. During those 270 days, however, Annie remained faithful to her God and anxious to complete the book of poetry she wished published after her passing. These were poems of faith and dedication to a God and a future Annie could see only in heaven, knowing that her earthly time was drawing to a close. On July 24, 1855, Annie Smith summoned up what strength she had and wrote her last poem. "Oh, shed not a tear o'er the spot where I sleep. For the living and not for the dead ye may weep. Why mourn for the weary who sweetly repose, free in the grave from life's burdens and woes?" 2 days later, at 4 a.m. on July 26th, Annie closed her eyes in death, only to await the resurrection. Her younger brother, Uriah Smith, himself converted to the Adventist cause in 1852, would for years afterwards sign letters, "Yours in the Blessed Hope," a tribute to his sister's fixed vision on life eternal. Despite personal disappointment, and even with the prospect of death before her, Annie Smith remained faithful. How do you maintain faith in the face of distressing circumstances? Our key Bible text today comes from Titus 2:13. Looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Saviour Jesus Christ. Thank you for listening to the Amazing Facts Daily Devotional.